For the record, my name is Peter Lewandowski. I'm the executive director, and with me is Shauna Kang, who's our associate fiscal administrative officer. I've shared with you a document outlining our proposed budget, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that. Can you just let me know initially how many of your, I have 16 positions. Are they all filled now?
No, we have 15 out of that 16 filled and one vacancy. And we are seeking actually in this budget to obtain additional funding to reclassify the existing position of an office assistant to a staff attorney.
Oh, that's what that was actually going to be my second question. What are we reclassifying this to? So so the office assistant would be a staff attorney. Do you need an office assistant, or you already have another one, or? We
don't have an office assistant. Actually, this stems from the it's a residual effect of the pandemic. The need for an office assistant has diminished as most of the inquiries come to us through online means directly to attorneys. Really, frankly, we would be able to probably at most justify a part-time office assistant. Right now, most of our staff shares that responsibility to respond to calls. However, we have a need for a staff attorney because of an increase in legal inquiries and also demands of our education initiatives. So that staff attorney would play a hybrid role by splitting the time between our education initiatives and compliance, providing compliance advice.
So what kind of legal inquiries have you seen an increase of? Just do they run the gamut?
Yes, a wide range from outside employment to conflicts. Obviously, last year there was a huge uptick in revolving door questions because of the retirements that occurred. But they've continued, and our attorneys in our legal division are very busy. I should note that historically, our legal division had 3 attorneys. We lost that one staff attorney position in 2015 during the budget cuts then. So prior to that, our legal division was staffed with 3 attorneys and a general counsel.
So this brings you back up to those 3 attorneys that you used to have back in 2015. And
Correct.
That third attorney will act also act as an office assistant quasi role.
Yes, it will be a hybrid. We multitask because we're a small agency, so that attorney will definitely provide support to our director of education, especially in providing trainings. And
all right, let me see. Representative Ryan, do you have any questions? Any questions? No? And I see no questions online. I don't know that everybody's here yet. So what can I ask you to make you stay a little bit longer? Robin, do you have any questions? All right. All right. Well, I understand everything that you had here, and thank you for the position count information. So that's very helpful.
Sure.
All right. You're all set.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice day.
You. Yeah, you too.
All righty. Next up is the State Contracting Standards Board, gentlemen. Actually, we have more than one person here this year, so. Mr. Gay, do you want to introduce your successor to us?
Thank you, Senator. David Gay for the record. I'd like to introduce Gregory Daniels as the new Executive Director of the State Contracting Standards Board. And then to my right is Jonathan Longman, who is the new Chief Procurement Officer for the state of Connecticut. Thank you, Senator.
Well, congratulations. Thank you. So it's nice to see you, Mr. Daniels. If you want to just give us a little overview of your current budget.
Sure.
currently our budget is approximately, give me 1 second. There we go. Did I misplace that? Just a moment.
Yep, so the goal really is for us to make sure that the funding that we provided last year and that are in the budget coming up next year gives you enough for the people that have been hired and for the increase in the wages that will happen over the next 2 years. So that's really what we're trying to make sure. And it looks to me like the governor put in exactly what the agency asked for.
Yes, that is correct, madam.
Perfect. And how many people do you have hired now, Mr. Daniels?
We have a total of 6 employees, including myself, hired thanks to the support from the committee and this body.
Thank you. And can you just let us know who you have hired and what their position is
Sure.
within your agency? Because this is really, I think this is the first time that the Contracting Standards Board sits before us with more than 1 employee. So it's kind of exciting.
Sure.
So-
So I wanted to, as part of my opening statement here, I wanted to kind of acknowledge not only the staff, but also the board. So I'll do that now, and that should inform the committee. So I'm joined, well, I'll repeat my name. My name is Gregory Daniels. I am the newly appointed Executive Director for the State Contracting Standards Board. With me is Jonathan Longman. He is the state's new Chief Procurement Officer. He's one of the 6 that I mentioned earlier, and I'm it's very excited to note that he comes with a great sense of a great background from the defense industry in terms of procurement, and he'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, if that's okay with the committee.
Yep.
Also with me is Samson Anderson, our research analyst. He's sitting behind me.
Yep.
He has extensive experience across multiple areas, state government, legislative experience, as well as an in-depth knowledge about budgeting. And Carmen Huffcutt, who's our training specialist, was unable to be with us today, but she has extensive experience in building training modules and has done some work with the Department of Health as well prior. With us also is Paul Netland Jr., our accounts examiner, and he joins us from the Defense Contract Audit Agency, where he spent many years examining proposals and validating incurred costs on flexibility price contracts. He brings a lot of critical skills that we'll need as part of our auditing efforts. Last is Christopher Wishop. He's an attorney and former FBI agent, filling our investigative attorney position. He's spent many years leading teams in anti-corruption efforts, where he brings a unique perspective and understanding on legal matters. So we sort of jumped into this, so
Sorry.
that's okay. So what I'll do is I'd like to note that I've submitted written testimony. Well, before I do that, let me also acknowledge one of our board members who's with us. I believe Robert Rinker is here as well. That said, our chair was unable to be with us today, so I've submitted written testimony on his behalf. With that, I'd like to express on behalf of the board our thanks and sincere thanks, even though I wasn't here, prior, but it is amazing to have such a exceptional team to work with. And I'm looking forward to the work that we have before us. I want to thank the committee for providing us with the budget and the positions. You see, we've all shown up today, but we have plenty of work to do. Without your funding, we would not be able to do this. We are also thankful that the governor's proposed budget for fiscal year 24 and 25 extends that support you initiated. With that, let me turn the testimony over to Jonathan Longman. Jonathan will give you some sense of what we're working on and some of our priorities for the next fiscal year.
Good morning, Chair Senator Austin and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. As Greg mentioned, my name is Jonathan Longman, and I'm the Chief Procurement Officer for the State Contract Standards Board. I personally want to express my most profound appreciation and gratitude for your persistent efforts to staff our board. I imagine it was a complex task. I come from the federal government, and I know the challenges faced by appropriators. Everyone needs more resources, but you came through for us, and we're incredibly grateful. So thank you. Our board's mission is really noble. We strive to improve contracting practices and uphold accountability. But more importantly, by adding staff, our goal is to implement solutions that will allow the board to focus less on reactive tasks and then focus on reforming procedures, raising awareness of procurement best practices, and then pushing for continued employee development for the procurement professionals of this state. A week ago, at the last State Contract Standards Board meeting, our board chairman, Larry Fox, ran an extensive strategy session where the team broke out into multiple groups, and the goal was to generate a vision for the new staff and develop a set of priorities as the staff began our operations. It was an excellent opportunity for the team to meet with the new staff, engage in various discussions, and hear the board members' concerns. Overall, our mission is made up of several vital functions: auditing, privatization, legislative changes, training, outreach, and education. And within those functions, there are several key actions that the board has identified as priorities as we move forward. As part of our submitted documents, we've extended a list of those activities as the employees are excited to move these efforts forward. This week, the staff's already begun discussing work plans to accomplish these tasks, and we've already begun to move out on a few items. As the staff starts working and developing a relationship with our partners across state agencies, we'll leverage these relationships and build consensus in identifying weaknesses in current procurement practices and policies. And the next step is then to measure and define the impact of those weaknesses. And finally, where appropriate, we'll develop solutions that reduce procurement risk and drive affordability. Continuous improvement is just that. It's continuous, and reform occurs incrementally. And success depends on the effectiveness of the developed solutions and stakeholder buy-in and follow through. Like Greg mentioned, we couldn't ask for a better staff. We've said a lot of great things about the staff, but also our board members deserve a great deal of credit. I've never met a more invested group of individuals, and they truly deserve a significant amount of praise. We have a lot of work to do, as Greg just mentioned, and without the committee, it wouldn't be possible. Not because our volunteer board isn't capable. They've done a fantastic job over the past few years, but you've really helped us add a staff, and the staff genuinely care about the mission of the organization. I want to make and we want to make even more significant impact for the taxpayers of this state. I can't say enough great things about our team, and I'm sure next year when we sit in front of this committee, we'll have many more things to talk about, and we can update you all on the accomplishments and set more goals for the future. So I'll wrap up and respectfully request your continued support in the budgeting process. We've built a team that is more than capable. We have clear direction from our board members, and we want to continue making the state's procurement practices more effective and efficient through incremental changes to the way the business is conducted across all state agencies. And again, thank you very much for your efforts. Turn things back over to Greg.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. We're kind of excited that you're all here because we really, this has been a fight that both my co-chair and I have been so interested in getting over the finish line. Because we think that you can do great things for the people in Connecticut and for the taxpayers, and to just see where improvements can be made. No one's looking to directly attack anybody, but we would like to be able to make significant changes that we believe will make our jobs easier and their jobs easier, ultimately, and save us a boatload of money, which would be really good on top of all of that. But let me see if there's any questions. Representative Walker.
Good morning, and it is so great to see you guys. You have no idea. My co-chair is really understating the voyage we got to this point, because we believed in you and we believe in your mission more than anybody did for quite some time. And I'll tell you why I was really focused on it, is that doing programming and policy and finding out that agencies have different ways of contracting services made it very problematic. Some agencies would contract, let's say, I'm going to give you $100,000 to work with 20 kids. And that would be the contract, with no quality assurance, no evaluation or anything. And then when our kids act up, we blame them. So we really want a general standard way of approaching contracting in Connecticut that's equitable for the agency, for the provider, and also for the taxpayers of Connecticut. When we contract with people, we want to know that we're going to get a product and we have an expectation of what they have to provide. And for whatever reasons, it was extremely scary for many people. And that's what a lot of our conflicts came from, even though they never would really quite say that. So for us, and we had a subcommittee, which we still have, and Representative Nuccio and I have been talking about, which is accountability. We're not trying to give away money because it's our money. It's everybody's money. And we want to make sure that it's doing the right thing. But we have to do that in order to make sure we're going in the right direction. So I again, whatever we can do, or even maybe you can provide us with information on how things are going, we would really like it. And I think we, as the leadership in appropriations, are probably going to have some requests that we will give to you on things that we are looking at and need to understand. So thank you again. No questions, because you guys, well, I guess I do have when did you guys actually start to meet as an organization? I missed that. I apologize for being late.
Well, the entire staff actually was last Friday.
Last Friday.
Yeah.
Wow. That is fortuitous to do it before you get in front of the mic.
Although
Awesome.
we did, there were communications before that, but officially in person last Friday.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll take it anyway, as long as we're going in the right direction.
Absolutely.
We just got to keep going the right direction. Well, thank you. And thank you all for your team and your volunteerism in the groups that work with you. And let's keep Connecticut moving. So thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Ryan.
Yes, good morning. I'm just looking at some of the tasks that you have. And I'm just, something that's unexpected to me here is the Groton situation where you're the ones who are responsible for suspending Mr. Ressler's contract. Have you ever done anything, had to do that before? I mean, I guess I was thinking it would be under the Attorney General's office. Or is this just a new facet because now you've got the staff to be able to do this?
Do you want to take that?
I think there's a couple pieces to that. First, I think the team has to finish the investigation first. I'm sorry.
Pull the microphone to you.
Is that better now? Okay, I apologize. I think there's a couple pieces to that, sir. I think the staff has to finish the investigation and gather all the details that they need to do. Then the working group then has to get together and decide a path forward. So again, it's my 5th day. I'm not completely sure on where we are in that process. But I do know that there are provisions within Chapter 62 that allow us certain authorities to either stop a contract or remove procurement authority. So I'd have to defer to them, that committee that's actually working on it. But we do have some types of enforcement actions there. I think that there's thoughts that some of those can be strengthened in the future, possibly now that we have a staff. But I'm sure we'll get to those discussions later on.
Your mic's not on, Kevin.
Say it again, please.
I don't want to. I guess it's just amazing once you find out what you actually can do once you have a staff. I guess that's the difference between now and before. Right?
I have to give the volunteers on the board a lot of credit. They've done a ton of work without a staff. And now that we have a staff that can work on things continuously, I think they'll be able to then make decisions more efficiently going forward. So, there's a lot of credit to that board. They have a lot of great skill sets that, really makes us well-rounded. And with all of those combined together, I think we can be a lot more effective.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Representative Nuccio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm always so short in these chairs. I want to just kind of mimic what Representative Walker said. One thing that we absolutely totally agree on is finding a way to make sure there's accountability in all of the stuff that we're doing up here. So I'm very happy that you guys are getting your feet underneath you and getting running. And I look forward to the work that you're going to be bringing forward, because it's just going to help us be better legislators, and it's going to help us meet more needs of the people in the state. So very much looking forward to the work that you guys are going to be putting out. And I wish you the best success.
Thank you.
Representative Porter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would say I don't want to belabor the issue, but I do, because it is exciting to have you all sitting before us. As the former Labor Chair, this is one that was a big deal for myself and Senator Kushner as well. And I just want to echo the sentiments of Chairwoman Walker, because she really did say all that needed to be said. It is about accountability, transparency, and getting the best bang for our buck, making sure that we're not wasting funds, especially since we don't have funds to waste. So thank you all for being here. I look forward to working with you and very excited to have you on board. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Representative Curry, you did have your hand up.
Yeah, I did put that down, but since you called me, I'll just quickly say it's great to see a chief procurement officer in place. And I just want to give a shout out to former state representative Kate Rotella, who really pushed on this a few years back, for that there was a position sitting there that was going to be able to focus solely on this particular issue. So just a quick shout out to her and for all the work that the leadership of this committee has done to get us to where we're at today with you and your organization.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Representative McCarthy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and welcome. I too just wanted to add my voice of gratitude to the board. And I did not hear as I came in. Can you just repeat how many staff members you have currently? And if you wanted to bring any new recommendations to the appropriations? Thank you.
We have a total of 6 staff members, including myself.
Madam Chair, if I may, and that is adequate, you believe, at this time?
We are exploring perhaps adding an admin.
Okay, again, thank you very much for all that you do, the oversight and looking at all the procurements. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, and we're all pleased to see you. This was something that was supported by the legislature broadly. You have friends over here, just let us know what's going on and we'll be happy to help out.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ready? Up next is the State Elections Enforcement Commission. Executive Director Brandy.
Hey, where's the women?
They have one, but
Okay.
she couldn't come today. She couldn't come. They did have. one.
We're used to it.
Yeah, no, they hired somebody. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Good morning. Co-chair Senator Austin and Representative Walker and Ranking Member Senator Berthel and Representative Nuccio and honorable members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to submit the testimony on the governor's budget for fiscal years 2024 and 2025. I am Michael Brandy, the Executive Director and General Counsel for the State Elections Enforcement Commission. The mission of the State Election Enforcement Commission is to administer and enforce the provisions of Connecticut's election laws and to thereby ensure the public's confidence in the electoral process. In the governor's proposed budget, there are no changes made to our requested budget, and for that, we would like to thank him. With regard to our agency, we hope that this committee will accept his budget as proposed. Our budget is pretty straightforward. It largely consists of personnel costs along with their respective payroll increases, technology upgrades, and a bare minimum for operating expenses. We are not asking for any increases or requesting any changes to the proposed budget. We fully recognize the state continues, as always, to face difficult budgetary decisions. We will continue to perform our core role as a watchdog agency, adjusting to shifting circumstances and setting priorities to use limited resources in the most efficient manner possible. I thank you for consideration and I'm available for any questions you may have.
So thank you, Director. I'm just looking at your position count.
Yes.
It's 35. Do you have 35 hired?
Not right now. We had some retirements. We had 3 retirements. We are down 7 individuals right now. We're in the process of rehiring 4 that are currently in interview process. And the balance we anticipate hiring in the next probably 2 months.
So I just want to go over that again. I'm sorry.
Sure.
You had 7 openings, so you're down
Correct.
to 28 right now.
Yes. Right now we're down to 28.
And you have 4 that you are hiring right away.
Yes. So what happened? We actually had 2 that opened up in the last month.
Oh, okay.
So they were very recent. We did have 3 retirements, with 2 of which were managerial positions. We internally promoted 1 person to the managerial position. My IT manager position, we're in the interview process right now.
Yep.
And the balance of the positions, including 2 attorney positions, we are hiring right now.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
And you feel that that's sufficient and you feel that the 7 openings that you have, that 4 will be hired very shortly
Yes.
and 3 others will be shortly thereafter?
Yes, we're in the process of hiring for all 7. It's just, part of the process it takes. It's extensive in terms of the interview processes and getting through all the DAS and OPM procedures. So we do anticipate hiring all of them within the next few months.
Okay, great. Let me see if there are any other comments or questions. Comments? No? Anybody? Representative Nuccio? Good morning, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's great. I think Kathy and I are going to tag team on this question the entire time. So from what you were just saying before, my question is, does your budget have the assumption that all of these people will be hired as of 7/1/2023?
Yes.
It does. And how successful have you been doing that in the past? Because you had openings in 2022. Did
Right.
you have all of them up and running before the first of the year?
We tried to. We've had people who have moved on to other positions. We've had, for example, I had 2 attorneys who moved into managerial positions following the wave of retirements. So, and those are managerial positions in other agencies. So we are continuing to try to replace and replenish our staff as quickly as we can. The only times that we've had trouble doing that was when we're like in the middle of the CEP process, where our staff is full out at that point, and it's really difficult to try to do the hiring process while we're in the middle of, that 5 or 6 month period of time that we're trying to handle CEP. But we do try to fill as quickly as we can, and that's what we're doing right now.
I'm just going to ask when we have the subcommittee meetings that if you can provide like your historical vacancies and when you fill them. If my concern is, if we're assuming everybody's going to be filled on 1/1, you're building in funds that you may not historically have been able to suspend.
Sure, we'll have that data for you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other comments or questions? Representative McCarthy?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'll go very quickly. Welcome
Thank
to
you.
the meeting. I know as the laws are changing, as we're moving forward now with absentee ballot voter registration, how do you see your office working, and does that increase your workload?
It does. It does increase the workload. What we've actually just done recently was we've tried to shift our enforcement unit slightly to, we added an additional legal investigator and reduced one attorney because we felt that with the way that the cases are being processed right now, it's more important that we get the investigations done as soon as possible and quicker. So we're working on those processes right now. But yeah, we do anticipate, I mean, look, we've been in a 2 or 3 year period of time right now where misinformation, disinformation has driven up complaints to our office, where we're constantly trying to bat down, you know, the information that's funneling through the internet and winds up in complaints on our desks. We're trying to get to the real complaints that matter and make sure that those are handled as quickly as possible. And then use a lot of the complaints that are coming in that are kind of the frivolous ones. Those are the ones we're trying to also use as education to show people that our systems work. So we do feel that we can get through the volume we have, and we've been doing a really good job of getting through our cases. And we have had some individuals who have filed kind of serial complainants. We had one individual who filed 58 complaints with us in a matter of a few days. And so we take every complaint seriously. We do process every one of them. If it's within our jurisdiction, we make sure that we, you know, fully investigate and answer those complaints and resolve them as quickly as possible.
Thank you for that additional information. Thank you, Madam
Sure.
Chair.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too. It's good to see everybody again.
Nice to see you. Colleen Murphy here. Is there any way she's online? Go ahead. You got to unmute yourself. Director Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm here today. I'm Colleen Murphy, the Executive Director and General Counsel of the FOI Commission. And I'm here to just very briefly comment on the Commission's budget and the Governor's proposed budget. This year, the Governor's budget aligns very nicely with the budget that the Commission submitted. And I'm happy to say that because that has not been the case in some prior years. But we did submit a very lean budget, essentially just a baseline budget, adding in required salary wage increases and some very minimal increases just to run our office. You'll see from my written testimony that we have just a one line item budget, and that 93% of that budget is consumed by personnel costs. So those are expenses that we must pay, and the other 7% accounts for all of our operating expenses, from, you know, running our copiers to sending out all of our mailings to paying our commissioners. So it is a very lean budget. We did not seek any additional staffing or any significant increases for any reason whatsoever this year. Now, I know the question that has been asked prior is what about our staffing levels? We have 16 positions, and currently 14 of those are filled. The 15th position will be filled as of this month, the 24th. We are filling the 15th position, so we've already hired somebody and he will start. So that'll be position number 15. As far as number 16, we are already advertising for that position, or preparing to advertise for it. We've gone through the motions to refill. In this particular instance, the person who held that position was promoted within our office to become our deputy director following the retirement of the former person who held that position. The commission is in a big transition period. We've had 5 retirements in the recent past, and as you know, with the staff of just up until now, we've really only had 14 filled positions. That was a big task for us to refill, restructure, reorganize. We've lost some of our institutional knowledge, obviously, but we're really trying to utilize utilize our new people and new energy to kind of change things up a little bit. And we're excited for the future. As I said, the governor's budget aligns with what we submitted, and it's again a very lean budget. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Director. I do have a couple of questions. How many FOI complaints have you got? Do you know how many FOI complaints you've gotten in the last year? And how many remain open?
I don't have the number for how many remain open. We were slightly down in the past 2 years during the pandemic times. Our numbers were down. We were in the 600 or so range. Our highest levels have been around 900. We have probably more open than usual, and I can get some numbers for you if you'd like, but during the pandemic, we lost probably 4 to 5 months worth of doing hearings and resolving complaints. So we're still trying to catch up on all of those matters that were not heard while the agency was shut down and while we were trying to figure out how to get our hearing process back up online.
So when do you expect that you will be back to a current level of FOI complaints so that we know that the backlog is done? We always know there's going to be some open complaints, but we're curious when we will be at the point where we will not have a backlog.
I think, well, we're always going to have a backlog, but I think probably the fastest that we can resolve complaints, knowing that we do have, we have to follow due process requirements and it takes us a while to get through the process. If we could be hearing cases within a few months of them being filed and then coming to final resolution of them within 4 to 5 months, that would be ideal for us. Right now, we're probably running 7, 8, 9 months. It really kind of depends on the case. Some cases are simple and can get adjudicated very quickly. Others require us to look at thousands, literally thousands of in-camera records. So it's kind of hard to box any one case or use any one case to exemplify where we're at. But I would hope that by this time next year, we would be in a much better position than we are now, and that we would have resolved all of those cases that were filed during the pandemic. The governor suspended the timelines during that period, as he did with many things. And so there are a number of cases that don't have deadlines on them that we're trying to run kind of a 2-tiered system. We're trying to deal with those cases, but also the new ones that have come in have a 1-year deadline. So we're trying to balance all of that. So regardless of how short or long our general backlog is, we typically must hear and resolve every single case within 1 year, other than during those pandemic times. So we're trying to catch up on those, and I would hope by next year we will have done that.
Thank you. And you don't think that additional staff are necessary for you to comply with getting them done by next year?
At this time, I mean, we're really studying that. At this time, we did not seek additional staffing, but I think this year, which will be quite a testing year for us, having a lot of new staff and some new and interesting issues and cases being brought to us, in addition to we now have jurisdiction over the vexatious requester complaints that are filed by agencies against individuals who are believed to be vexatious. I think this year will be really a testing year for us, and we may seek some funding next year for perhaps an additional attorney, perhaps an IT person, because so many of our cases do involve issues regarding electronic access. And also now that remote meetings are being conducted, there are issues related to that we must resolve, in addition to our own needs with regard to conducting our own remote proceedings. So I think next year might be a year that we would potentially consider looking for more funding, but we wanted to see how this year panned out.
So if you could keep us in the loop relative to the number of cases, and when you come to the subcommittee, if you could just bring for us the number of open cases there are over a year old. So that we understand that they are longer than a year relative to the pandemic, probably, so that we have an idea what that is. That would be very appreciated.
Absolutely.
Very much appreciated. Representative Ryan, anything? Representative McCarthy?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and was looking here, but welcome. I just have a couple of quick questions following up on Senator Austin's comments on the hearings. Can you tell us of the staff members, how many of those would be mediators or ombudsmen? And also, I know in the past, your commission would come out to municipalities and do workshops. Is that still ongoing?
Yes, all of our lawyers also serve as mediators. So they serve dual functions. Sometimes they will act as hearing officers, but they will not do so in cases where they acted as a mediator. So all of our lawyers do that. In addition to our public education officer now, it'll be under a new title, the Director of Education and Communications. That's our 15th position that we're filling. That person has also been serving as a mediator. So we have a number of mediators. Mediators are assigned to every single case. And I think that speaks to why we are able to resolve. Typically 65% of our cases get resolved through that process one way or another. In terms of whether we go out to municipalities, we typically have the philosophy that if they ask us, we will come. So we've done that, and throughout the pandemic, our public education officer has accommodated and done remote proceedings, but now going back to more in-person ones. And we will do that both for the municipalities as well as any state agency that would ask us. On occasion, the commission will order a education session, and so they happen that way as well, but those are fairly rare.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none. We appreciate it and have a nice day. Thank you.
Too.
Up next, we have the Office of Child Advocate. Yep. As long as you're not saying anything bad about me, I'm okay. Yep, you're all set.
Good morning. Boy, I'm glad I came up early.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I am Sarah Egan. I run the state's Office of the Child Advocate. I have provided written testimony that outlines our full-time staffing, which is 8 folks, the responsibilities that we have in state law, which are numerous. And I will say for the first time in my 9 years as child advocate, I am requesting some additional staff support in the office, and I'm happy to talk about why, but I want to make sure I use your time the way you need me to, so I can review any aspect of our testimony more fully.
So, Sarah, when you said you asked for more staffing, did the governor agree with your ask? Because it looks like he gave you what you asked for.
Yeah, well, we were told we couldn't ask for any positions.
Okay. All right. So how many are you asking for?
So we are asking for 2 positions, and I can tell you on what page, starting on page 2 for child fatality review. We're a permanent member and we staff the state's child fatality review panel. And we have, I'm asking for an additional position for that so that we can produce more information for policymakers regarding the deaths of children whose caregivers are being served by state agencies. We also have a number of, I think, very important cohort death reviews we're trying to do around infants and toddlers, but also we added one this year around 18 to 21-year-olds who've died for preventable reasons. Child fatality review is it's an extremely big lift. I can keep doing what we're doing, but I think we can, there's some important work we need to get to that we'd need one more body for. And I have a suggestion about where the money could come from if folks were interested.
Where do you want us to take the money from, Sarah? Because wherever
too
you're taking
candid?
it
Are
from,
we
it's
on
already going
TV?
to somebody
I
else. so-
know. I mean, I know I don't want to be presumptuous, so I mean.
Go
I
ahead
just-
and be
I thought about it.
presumptuous.
Okay.
Go for it.
I guess it goes with the job title, right? So I'll just go ahead. So, on that part, the state is obligated under Federal Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, CAPTA, to have a state plan for the production of certain information related to child fatalities. We currently don't get and have never gotten any of the CAPTA money. Over $1 million of that goes to the Department of Children and Families, and I'm sure they use it appropriately to their best discretion. But I think we need one body, like a children's services consultant level. So if we could take even a 10% or even less of that towards child fatality review, it would comply with our federal state plan obligations, and would fund that position.
So you're asking for one position for that, and you're asking for one position to oversee the child fatality review panel?
So it would be one position for child fatality review. That's on page 2,
Yep.
potentially with a portion of CAPTA money.
Okay,
And then I'm asking for, on page 3 is facility investigation. So in 2016, the legislature added another directive for us to report out every 2 years on conditions of confinement for youth aged 15 to 21. We came with no additional staffing at the time. It is an enormous mandate, and it's beginning to exceed our reach. We have one assigned facility investigator historically. It also means we're not really going to other facilities where kids are, because it's really all about corrections now. There's probably 500 15 to 21-year-olds at any given time across at least 7 to 10 different facilities in the juvenile and adult system. Obviously, the review work is extremely a lot. And right now we have,
are you presuming the funding for that comes from any place but the general fund? Just a question.
well, maybe it could come from, ZOC might have a little bit to spare and throw our way.
I don't know about that.
I don't have a specific suggestion on that. I guess I just wanted to inform the committee that that the work is a little bit beyond our
Okay.
means at this point.
Understood.
And I have a very, very experienced facility investigator, and
So
it's
you-
just a lot.
So you have 8 right now and you're looking for 10.
I'm looking for 10,
Okay,
if at all possible.
okay. And that's the only addition to your budget?
Correct.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Sarah? Representative Walker, followed by Representative Nuccio.
Thank you, and thank you, Sarah. Good to talk to you today. Question, I know besides the child advocate working in the commission, with the facilities and things like that, you also work with the Department of Justice in some of the things that they are looking at Connecticut for and things. Where are we with the lawsuit with the Department of Justice right now? And that's with Department of Corrections.
Correct. Yeah. So just for folks that don't know, our office, after that legislative mandate came out, published a report, a baseline report on conditions of confinement, focusing on, in particular, on conditions for minor boys in the adult correctional system, 15, 16, 17-year-olds at MYI and Cheshire. Following the publication of that investigation, the U.S. Department of Justice launched its own investigation into conditions. And after 2 years, they issued a report last winter finding that conditions for minor boys violate children's constitutional rights, including prohibitions in the 8th Amendment against cruel and unusual punishment, indicating that the state had significant work to do to meet the mental health and educational and developmental needs of children in state custody. It is my understanding, we do meet with the Department of Justice periodically for updates on their end and on our end. We share, frankly, we share more information than we get, because
Okay.
that's their process is confidential, but it's my understanding, and we'll be seeking an update soon, that it remains in settlement discussion between the federal government and the state of Connecticut at this time. It remains unresolved. So it's an open question.
Okay, that's one. You also are dealing with the death of a child in another lawsuit. Am I correct on that?
Well, we have the responsibility for child death review. We have a number of child fatalities that we are actively reviewing now. that are very in-depth. The most recent being, I shouldn't say the most recent, because there's actually one yesterday. A homicide of a young child out in Brooklyn, Connecticut. But we have a couple of very active investigations. The two most recent that we opened, one is of a child who was killed allegedly by her father, who was under parole supervision at the time of the child's death. The ranking member from the Judiciary Committee, Senator Kissel, has asked us for an update as soon as practicable and possible around our system findings there. I think we will have systems findings there. We also have an active investigation into the death by homicide of a 2-year-old little boy in Stamford, whose parents were both under state supervision at the time of the child's death.
I think the reason why I'm asking about this is to demonstrate the need for the additional staff, because it's up to us to make sure that we cover all the investigations clearly and carefully to make sure that what we can do is addressed so that people can't say, well, if I had staff, we probably would have gotten a little bit more detail. So I think it's important that we face our fears, but we do it appropriately in the way we are charged to do and provide the staffing to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for what you do.
Thanks, Rep. Walker.
Representative Nuccio, followed by Representative Porter.
Good morning. Thank
Good
you.
morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions. I'm looking at the budget document that we have, the more in detail one. It's saying that you have 9 staff. So is it you have 8 and 1 open?
Yeah, so we have 8 full-time. We have one of our folks who just retired. We had 2 of our most senior people retire in February and March of this past year. One of them, Faith Foswinkle, has come back on a 120 to help out with facility investigation because we're so short there. But that's temporary, so that'll be, what I'm trying to do is if I can get another position for facility and Faith can stick with us until June, then at least it helps us get our next report out that we're required to put out. So that's what that is.
Okay, so, but I just want to make sure I understand. You ultimately want 10.
Correct. Thank you.
Not, so the 9, so filling the one that you have plus 1 more.
Correct.
Okay, and I will tell you honestly, I love nothing more than somebody who brings me a problem and possible solutions. So I just want to make sure I understand the request from DCF. So they're currently getting the CAFTA money.
It could be that it's possible that another agency gets some of it too, but I know that they get around $1 million of CAFTA money.
Okay, and the rationale here is basically that, you know, you're doing this work. And I understand. So it's about $100,000 as you're asking for. Is that your average FTE cost?
For the level that I'm looking for, probably be around there. Yes.
Okay, so I'm seeing this as $100,000 ask then in this case to go from filling the one that you have and adding 1 more head count. And you mentioned DOC as a possible spot also.
So just to clarify. So if we, it would be 2 positions, one for facility, one for fatality, probably children's services consultant level, which is a step down from assistant child advocate. So a little bit less expensive. I think we could do it. All told, that would probably be closer to 200,000, I think.
But I guess what I'm
Yeah.
trying to get my head around is in the budget, it says 9, right? So I'm assuming you've got the funding for those 9. So we'd be looking at adding 1 head count to get you to 10.
Where did I try to see my budget man from DAS? Where'd he go? Oh, there he
He's
is.
over there.
Okay.
He's
So,
on the
right,
outside.
because the 9 is just a part-time right now.
Okay.
So what the net increase
right.
is, Lizardo would know better, right? So she's, you know, we saved a little to fund the part-time. So we had the 2 folks retire. They had
Yep.
2 of our bigger salaries, right? That
Yep.
left it took a while to replace. That left a little bit of a gap so we could bring Faith back part-time to help out with facility. And then, but so then we would be back to 8 FTEs.
Right. Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. I think we're saying the same thing,
Okay.
but slightly different.
This is the hardest part of the job for me, by the way.
See, this
Everything
is
else
the
I can
easiest for
do,
me.
this is like,
This is the easiest for me. Like I'm a numbers person.
the
so
math part is harder.
I'm doing the math here. So the only other question I have is when you're doing these investigations and these findings, do you bring those findings back to the committees of cognizance to suggest changes that would help to mitigate something that's this horrific happening again?
Yeah, always we do that. So the process for anything that we would produce is we develop a draft. Usually we're talking to agencies, sometimes with legislators as we go, depending on the issues. But usually with the agencies or state or local, we develop a draft. We send it to the state and local agencies or the subject of the review for comment, correction, response, what have you, summary of what they've done to try to address the problems. Once we have that feedback, we create a near final version of that. We then bring that to committees of cognizance so they can see it before it hits the newspaper, particularly if I think it's something that's kind of, big. I don't want them to be surprised by that. But the structure of every report will be looking at what does the law require? What are the policies and procedures in place? Were they followed or were they not there? And then these are our recommendations, both for agency best practice, but also for changes in state law. And over my time as the child advocate, I've recommended at least a dozen changes in state law arising out of our investigative reports, almost all of which the legislature has adopted.
You say almost all, so.
I'm sure there's got to be something. I'm just hedging.
Yeah.
You know?
I would hope that we would listen when you have findings from something. like this.
Legislature has been very responsive to our work over the many years. And some of our recommendations we own is sort of exclusively and we'll raise and sort of write for you. Some of them we work with a coalition, let's say on the juvenile services side or through JJPOC. But we've had a lot of traction here over the years.
So the only thing that I'm going to ask for then is when we get to the subcommittee that we, the DAS numbers person, that we finalize, I'd like to understand, is it 9 full-time people that are in here? Or is it 8 plus a part-time? I'd like to understand the head count and what the assumptions are for hiring, because I think the ask is 1. So I just want to make sure I'm fully understanding that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Porter, followed by Representative Exum.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Sarah. That's what I want to say first. Thank you for the work that you do, you and your office, on behalf of these children in the state of Connecticut. I want to go back to the facility investigator, because we were having a conversation around a lot of this last night. And which facility? Well, let's start here. How many facilities do we have children at?
So, reporter, so everybody's definition is going to be a little bit different, right? So our jurisdiction is 15 to 21. So that means just shy of the 22nd birthday. So that's going to be, we have the juvenile side, right? Where we have detention in Bridgeport, Hartford. We have the Regions programs, the private Regions programs around the state. We have Journey House. So that's at least 5, 2, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Then we have the DOC, 2 DOC facilities. These are just minors, 15 to 17-year-old. You have York and you have NYI. Then you have, so that brings us up to 8. This math I can do, I think. And then we have the 18 to 21s, which some of which are at NYI. There's probably about 200, 225 in any given time at NYI. But then you also have 18 to 21s at Garner, at Corrigan, at Cheshire, at McDougall Walker. And those are going to be where the most of the 18 to 21s are. So like there's 40 to 50 18 to 21s at McDougall Walker, where frankly, we've been very concerned about conditions, right? So there's just so much, there's so many youth. And every time we go into a facility and meet with a youth, Heather and Faith went earlier this week, they come back with stuff we need to do. Right? Because you meet with a youth, they need stuff, right? So now you got to stop your system. You did your site visit and now you got 4 other things you have to do, times all those facilities, times all those kids, times creating a report. So that's where the answer to where all the kids are.
Wow. And 4 of those are DOC facilities.
More than 4.
Garner, Corrigan, Cheshire, McDougall Walker.
NYI, York, Garner, Corrigan, Cheshire. Did I say McDougall Walker? So that's.
Yeah, you did.
All right.
But you're also going to have them at the jails too.
And the jails, which we don't get to.
Okay, so I think the point that I'm making is currently you have 1 part-time.
We have 1 full-time. Heather's full-time and Faith is helping out on the.
So you have 1.5
for now. When we once Faith's not here, we have 1. And we all help out. I mean, I go. I mean, we all pitch in.
I do understand that. This is not a slight on your part in any way. I'm just trying to make an assessment. Is what you're asking for enough to get done the work that you're describing to us? Because you're currently at 8.5 and you're asking for 10.
Right.
So 1 full-time investigator, 1 full-time
A child fatality.
fatality.
Yeah.
So my question to you is one additional investigator going to be enough to do what's required of your office on behalf of these children?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that question. I mean, I think that over the years, we meet our obligations, right, with what we have. And as I said before, we've never asked for additional staffing. You know, with each of the things that we do, I mean, I could keep the whole office busy doing child fatality review. I could keep the whole office busy doing facility review, right? And I can't, so I'm not sure how to answer. The more we have, the more we can do. But this was, I thought, those sort of minimal requests that we needed to make to get the work done that lies before us in the next 18 months that I think needs to get done.
Okay, thank you for that. The last thing I wanted to go back to was the settlement discussion, right? With the federal oversight we're under. What exactly do you mean when you say it's under settlement discussion?
So when the DOJ made its findings, right, it issued a findings report, it goes through a process, it puts the state on notice, you know, we could sue on, you know, the state for these constitutional violations, but we're going to try to resolve that. That's standard. The DOJ informed me at the outset of that process that it usually takes them about a year to reach settlement with a state. So we're just right over that year point. And again, the settlement process is confidential. That's bilateral between the state and the Department of Justice. As I said, we do meet with them periodically where they may check in with us a little bit and see what we're doing because our work is ongoing. And we weigh in on things we think could be in a settlement, but there is no final settlement at this time. But I think I would expect one, just based on the timing that they gave us in the beginning, I would expect one in the
Fairly
next few
soon.
months. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for that, because that was going to be my last question, and we can continue this offline. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Representative Exum, followed by Representative Osborne.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Sarah.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for your report and for all that you do. It's heavy and I appreciate it. I just had a couple of questions though around the child fatality review, just for my clarification. Did you say that it's the deaths that involve caretakers who are under this, have state oversight in some way? Is that correct?
So it's not limited to that, Representative Exum. So we have responsibility under state law to staff the state's child fatality review panel, which means that we get notice of every sudden and unexpected death of a child that comes under the jurisdiction of the medical examiner, which are going to be deaths that are not automatically sort of deemed to be from natural causes, right? So if a child dies from like pediatric cancer, right, that's not going to come to the medical examiner. But an otherwise healthy child who dies for some unexplained reasons will come to the ME. That means it comes to us. The CFRP, State Child Fatality Review Panel, meets monthly. It's multidisciplinary, meets with the ME, meets with us. We staff that, so we provide with the ME sort of what's happened in the previous month, who's died, what we know about that. Some percentage of those children may live in families that also have state involvement. Those may be subject. So our responsibilities are to issue an annual report about the rates and trends around child death and recommendations for prevention, which we do. Within available appropriations, we are also expected to investigate where necessary to learn more about children that may die on the state's watch, right? Okay. We can also be directed, and we have been in my tenure several times by the legislature or the Child Fatality Review Panel to investigate a death. So we have done several reports over the last several years responsive to those directives where the legislature has had a hearing and has asked us for more information. So we try to do all of that within available appropriations.
Okay, thank you very much. That helps to clarify that for me. And the other one was just as a follow-up when Rep. Porter was speaking to you, and you said, well, we don't get to the jail. So so it does make me think as well, like, what is that because of a shortage of staff? So it makes me wonder again, too, around the ask for an additional 2, maybe 1.5, but maybe there should be an additional ask in that or consideration, because if there are findings that are viewed whenever the prisons are addressed, I can only imagine what is taking place at the
Right.
jails. I'd like to know that. I'd like to know that there were eyes there. And it sounds to me as though that this is related to not having enough bandwidth to do that work.
I mean, I hate saying that, but I just want to be candid with the committee that, I mean, we are, and with that project more than any of them, we are rationed because there's just only so much you can get to with the facility. And like I said, everybody pitched, we're going out to a facility Friday. I've got one of my other folks going to that. Yeah, so everybody pitches in, but we can't get everywhere with 1.5 people.
With 1.5 people.
Yeah.
And what is the difference for anyone listening in? What is the difference between the jail and the prison?
Yeah.
When it comes to young people.
Right. So we're not going to have our 15 to 17-year-olds are not going to be in the local jails, right? So that's going to be our 18 to 21s and others, the 18 to 21s that fall under our jurisdiction that may be there temporarily while they're processed pre-trial before being transferred to one of the prisons. And like I said, about half of the 18 to 21-year-olds are at NYI. That's where our last 2 reports have really focused. And we're trying to get to in this next report, the other more permanent locations where our 18 to 21-year-olds are. And we have I think it's fair to say, and we've discussed with the Department of Correction, a lot of very serious concerns about conditions for these older youth in those other facilities.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, and consider that number. Like, I would like to know realistically, even if it's a wish, what you think would be adequate. I'd be very interested in knowing what that is. Thank
Okay,
you so much.
let's wrap
Thank
up
you,
this.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Osborne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And hi, Sarah. It's been a number of years. For those of you who don't know, I did a stint as a child protection attorney, and Sarah was one of my trainers back when there was an Office of Child Protection. So I know how valuable the work that you do is in preparing attorneys when there is DCF involvement in juvenile court. So thank you for what you do. It's really important work. With respect to the fatalities, so I want to make sure I understand. Your office will investigate every unexpected fatality, whether it is deemed accidental at the outset or not?
Yeah, so we will, let's start with the word track, right?
Okay.
So we'll get the notices from the ME. We chart continuously, but every month review at the State Child Fatality Review Panel, what child deaths have come to the ME, what emerging findings there are about manner of death, which will be accident, homicide, suicide, or undetermined, which are usually our infants or where there's no other medical cause. That's a whole complicated topic. So we're always tracking that. Then there's always going to be preliminary information that we have from the ME scene investigation, from our preliminary records review where available. And we'll include that, right? So what do we know about a 12-year-old suicide? What do we know about a 3-year-old homicide? Then in terms of it, that all gets reviewed and discussed, right? Across manner of death, right? So how are we doing on car accidents? How are we doing on drownings, right? Why do we have such racial and ethnic disproportionality around drownings? What do we have to talk to our legislators about? So there's always public health related findings and recommendations across that general review, right? Then within available resources or when directed by the legislature, we will take a more in-depth investigation where, let's say, recently, as I said, a child was murdered allegedly by their father man was under the supervision of 2 state agencies at the time, right? So people have questions about that. And often legislators have had questions, right? It doesn't always mean something didn't happen that should have happened, but it sometimes means that, right? So legislators will come to us and they'll say, what happened? There's no other entity that's situated to answer those questions. So we will undertake those investigations as directed and where resources permit.
So when the public thinks of the Office of the Child Advocate, and when I think of the Office of the Child Advocate, I think of the work that you do around those non-accidental deaths, around those child protection issues. But the scope of your work is far greater.
Right.
And if you were to parse out the work between the child protection work you do versus the public health or accidental work, can you quantify how much of that is the accidental or public health versus the child protection work you do?
So we do, so you were just talking about the child fatality review work, right?
Correct,
Because,
correct.
because we have a lot of other responsibilities. That's a very interesting question. I mean, it's all a balance, right? I don't know that I could quantify it. We have an obligation under state law to issue an annual report. We do to meet and staff the CFRP. I'd say that's mostly public health related. We do that we meet in order to do that work with stakeholders around the state, from the Connecticut Hospital Association to the perinatal collaborative doctors, to the American Academy of Pediatrics, talking to them to people working on safe teen driving, right? A lot of that is public health. It is our strategic goal to make sure that the data that we collect for CFRP is passed through where it needs to go, here to committees, to the MAPOC, to the JPOCs, to the hospital association. So it's probably, as I'm talking it out, more public health related, right? But then you have these terrible outcomes that people want answers to. And that work is very labor intensive and very fraught. But I think is really important to make sure we're doing, because it involves how government is interacting with highly vulnerable, high need families. Does that answer your question?
It does. So, I think my point is that you have been doing this really expansive work in an office where most of us just think of it as a child protection or child protection reporting and investigation piece. You've been doing a vastly wider array of tasks with 8.5 people for the entire state, correct?
Oh, there were 5 when I got there.
Well, thank you very
really
much.
small.
And I appreciate the opportunity to understand that as we're looking at your requests. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Representative
you, Madam
Osborne.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from any of the members of the committee? No. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Well, we're at a dilemma here. We have one more agency for government A out too. Oh, okay, Secretary of State, but that's that's at 12:30. We have the Office of Victim Advocate also, and we are way ahead of us. We are just rocking it out. Maybe it's because it was a long day yesterday, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Getting right to the point. So I guess I'm going to stand at ease till I know the victim advocate is supposed to be on Zoom. So we're trying to see if we can get her, and I guess we'll send out a notification to the Secretary of State to see if they can come over earlier so that we can maybe finish this up. So if people just stand at ease for a minute until we get some response, but we will have 2 more people as soon as we find them. Thank you. At this time, we're going to recess until 12:30. I'll give it 12:15, just in case we can get victims advocate on here too. We'll recess until 12:15 and we'll reconvene. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
So we're gonna. Who knows? There I go. So, we're gonna start back up. It's 12:15. And, I believe, we have the Office of the Victim Advocate. Natasha, are you here? Miss Pierre?
Yes, I am.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello, I'm Natasha Pierre, the State Victim Advocate from the Office of the Victim Advocate. I've submitted testimony regarding our agency and the activities for the year. And the budget that was allocated will help us continue to do what we do. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
How many positions do you have?
I have 3 and myself is 4.
So you have 4 and all are filled?
Yes.
And you put in a budget and you asked for that you asked for with the governor, and that the governor put in exactly what you asked for?
The budget that is reflected just reflects the salary increases that are required. Our OE budget always is around $20,000 to $30,000, and that will remain the same. So we generally let the fiscal person put it in, and they usually just ask for,
Okay.
the bare minimum.
All righty. Does anybody have any questions? Let's see, hold on, I got people coming in.
Okay.
Nope. Nope.
All righty. Well, you all have a great rest of the day.
You too. Thank you.
Senator Austin, I believe the Secretary of the State is with us now.
We are here on Zoom.
I keep going from system to system and turning on the wrong microphone. It's driving me crazy. So good afternoon, Madam Secretary. It's a pleasure to see you. So we're here to talk about your budget. And I was wondering if you wanted to just give us an overview.
Sure. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. What I don't know, are my colleagues who are joining you in person in the room? I know we're a little ahead of our scheduled time.
Yep. Can you just let her know who's here? To just go up to that microphone. She'll be able to hear you. You got to hit that red button. Yeah, there you go.
Secretary Thomas Chantel Vars is here.
Tom Iano is here also.
Thank you for joining us in person. We're sorry the rest of us cannot be here. I'm joined remotely by Deputy Secretary Jacqueline Kozin, Chief of Staff and General Counsel Gabe Rosenberg, our Director of Business Services, Chris Drake, and our staff attorney for the Elections Division, Aida Carini. And our legislative liaison is likely in the room somewhere as well. So I'm going to jump right in to make sure I preserve as much time as possible for any questions you may have. So regarding our budget, first, I'd like to thank the governor and his staff at OPM for recognizing our evolving needs and for including funding for a new centralized voter registration system, maintenance to our accessible voter ballot marking machines, an additional staff attorney to handle the very large increase in FOIA requests and inflationary adjustments so we can manage our rising costs. So I hope that this committee will include those items in your budget and also consider several other line items that are critical to our mission. We've submitted written testimony in our packets, which provide much more detail and data about each of these items. But in brief, I'm asking you to once again appropriate $2 million each year of the biennium so we can continue to conduct public information programs as we have in the past several years. In your packet, you'll find some top line data about the success of last year's program. And given the policy changes that we expect to come down the pike following this legislative session about our elections and the continuing confusion that we see around basic operations related to how to vote, how to register, where to vote, we feel this funding is critical to our mission. I'm also requesting $40,000 to reclassify existing staff to licensing analysts within our business services division. The positions would join our team charged with investigating and levying fees against businesses that are operating in Connecticut without being properly registered. So this would not only help to protect Connecticut consumers by cracking down on illegally operating businesses, but we project that with this modest investment, it would help us generate more than or definitely up to 10 million in increased revenue for the state. And lastly, I'm requesting an appropriation of $93,000 to hire a full-time associate fiscal administrative officer within our management and support services team. As our office has grown in responsibility and our revenue has almost doubled over the last several years, it's become imperative that we have a professional level staff with accounting experience aside from the one director within that division currently. And I'll just conclude by saying that despite all the challenges over the last several years, our office, which has been flat funded from the general fund for the past 2 biennium, has continued to do more with less. And with these modest budget requests, we are committed to continuing to operate under conservative means without impacting any of the services we provide to the public. So I thank you for your time, and me and my team are here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So Madam Secretary, the $2 million and the 40,000 and the 93,000, there are they, I know the 2 million's not. Are the 40,000, 93,000 already included in the budget, or are these additional asks that you're asking for?
They are not in the budget. I'm sorry, in the governor's budget, but they were in our initial budget request.
Okay. And the $2 million is not in the budget either, correct?
Correct. And I will say there was a misunderstanding with OPM. That 2 million allocated in the last biennium came from federal funds, and they mistook that to mean it would continue from federal funds, but we're requesting carry forward funding because there are no federal dollars that have been allocated.
Okay. And relative to the number of positions that you have in your office, I show 88 positions that you're asked, that the governor's asked for. You had 87. The 88th one was a staff attorney to assist in Freedom of Information Act requests. So of those positions, how many positions are filled within your agency, and how many vacancies do you have?
Just so I don't misspeak, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Vars from MSS to fill us in on those details.
Good afternoon, co-chairs. So the positions that we currently have
So
filled.
you might want to just say who you are.
I apologize.
I apologize.
My
My
name is
timing wasn't as
Chantal
good as I
Vars.
thought. I thought we would be past this now, but
Hold on a minute, Jerry. Thank you. Go ahead.
My name is Chantal Vars. I am the Director of Management Support Services for the Secretary of State's office. And so currently we have 67 positions filled.
And of those that are, that means you have 21, well, 20 not filled of your currently appropriated. Are you filling those 20?
So technically our count is 72 positions.
Okay.
And so there are 5 positions that are vacant.
So we have it down as 87. That's what we appropriated dollars for last year.
So I think this goes to the funded vacancies and the unfunded vacancies, where the agency count is probably different from what is actually what it technically should be, but we have 72 positions within our office.
And those 5, are they out for, are you hiring people for them? Are they?
Correct. So I think with the retirements, the waiver retirements that have happened, our office, it's been quite difficult to fill some of those vacancies. I can speak for my department alone. It took us 2 times to hire payroll staff to put the positions out. So I think with the wave of retirements that have happened over the last year and a half, hiring has been quite challenging.
Okay, so thank you for that. So Madam Secretary, we're going to be going to subcommittee meetings after this. And so we would like to understand, and we'll have OFA do an analysis on the number of positions, because we have it down as 87. And so we need to know how that fits into the dollars that we have, because we have 3 million, right now we're 3,193,000, and then the agency requested 3,660,000. thousand and change. And the governor gave a little bit slightly less than that. So we need to know how many positions you have. Why do we have it down as 87 and you say you have 72? So we need some additional information. So when at the subcommittee, if you wouldn't mind bringing that information, that would be perfect. And we have on here one staff attorney for Freedom of Information Act request. Is that something that you feel is necessary, Madam Secretary?
Yes, absolutely. And in your package, you'll find some graphs over the last several years. The number of requests that we have received have risen by, I believe it's about 92%. I have been here for about 6 weeks, and already we are on pace to outdo last year's record. It is just becoming more and more frequent. And we expect that to continue, and we really need another attorney to help vet that.
Well, thank you for that. Do you have any questions?
Yes, please.
Representative Walker.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Madam Secretary. Good to see you, and I hope you're having a good visit down in Washington. Bring back money, okay? So could you? I've missed the exchange that you had with Senator Austin. Could you just go over the requests again? I'm sorry, I apologize, I didn't hear it, but I got the 2 million, and the 2 million was for what exactly?
To continue the public information campaign that we started several years ago. We have just found it to be so helpful in helping people understand. A lot of people had questions about things you wouldn't think they have questions about, such as, where do I go to register to vote, or how do I find my polling place? And then my favorite, how do I fill out my absentee ballot envelope? So we believe that with continuing education, it is a real service to the state. The other request, and this is in addition to what was outlined in the governor's budget, is 40,000 to reclassify a staff person in our business services division. That person would be working to crack down on companies that are not licensed properly, but conducting business in Connecticut. So we think with that modest investment, we could collect up to about $10 million in increased revenue for the state, because we have found in our department, and again, you have more information in your packets, that by being intentional and putting a little bit of staff time behind some of these people who are not meeting the mandated requirements, we've been able to recoup much more funding for the state. And then lastly, 93,000 to hire a full-time associate fiscal administrative officer for the management and support services team. Our office has doubled in terms of revenue over the last 4 to 5 years. So we need another professional level staff person with accounting experience in that division. And then the items that we hope you will also support that did appear in the governor's budget, the new centralized voter registration system, maintenance for our accessible voter ballot marking machines, an additional staff attorney to handle the very large increase in FOIA requests that we receive, and then some inflationary adjustments.
Okay, so as Senator Austin was talking to you, the position that you asked for, you already have someone for the reclassification, so it's not a new person in your head count, but you do have the fiscal officer for managing your revenues in your office, and that would be a new position that would be added to your office, correct?
That would also be a reclass, but Chantel, please correct me if I'm wrong.
That would be a new position. Both the staff attorney as well as the AFAO would be 2 new positions.
Oh, they would both be new positions.
Correct.
Okay.
I
All right.
apologize.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great to see you.
Representative Ryan, any questions? No? Representative Nuccio?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just one out of my head. Looking at the books here, and I think you're one of the only areas that are asking for the funding in inflation. Can you tell me what's behind that?
Thank you for your question. So the inflationary funding is regarding the printing of all of the, excuse me, the election forms. Postage, it all has increased over the last 60% of printing has increased over the last fiscal year. For instance, the Blue Book cost us about $60,000 one year to produce. It's now about $90,000 to $110,000 for us to produce. So printing of materials and elections forms has increased between 40 to 60%. And so that's what those inflationary costs are, as well as the software maintenance agreements for our systems that we run.
Thank you.
And if I could, sorry, Representative, that sounds like Nuccio. Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good. And I would just add that a lot of these or all of these items are items that we are mandated to do under law. So we have no option to do it or not do it. So that may be a difference between some of the other agencies not including items that they have control over.
I appreciate that. When we have the subcommittee, if you could detail that out. My other question is in regard to the ad for the FOIA, and this is just could be just my own learning. So we had the FOIA commission in front of us earlier today. I'm wondering if you could differentiate between what they do and what you do and why you need more staff there on top of what we already have in the FOIA area.
Sure, I'm going to turn this over to an attorney who may.
Hi, Representative. What the FOI attorney in our office would do is field the incoming requests under the Freedom of Information Act, process them, determine what documents we have and are fall under the act and what might be exempt, and then reply to the person who made the request. The FOI Commission largely handles complaints from that process from every state agency or about every state agency.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. I'm learning as we go. So, and then the last question that I have is in regard to the central voter registration system. You said there was maintenance and such that needs to happen. Can you give us a little bit of color around what that is for the $1 million that's in here?
Sure. Do you want to, is that a Tom?
It's a Tom question.
Tom, I'm going to turn that over to you because you will more succinctly describe it. And
Very good. Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Maiano. I am the agency IT manager for the Office of Secretary of State. The maintenance required to support those systems is an annual cost, and that covers maintaining the system. So if there are changes that need to be made, it covers the cost of online support from the vendor, and it covers the cost for hosting the application, meaning all the computers are hosted centrally, and we pay for that hosting service. So that $1 million covers all of the aspects of what it takes to run the voter registration system in a given year.
So you mentioned that it's an annual cost. So is it a new annual cost, or why would that not have been in your prior year budgets?
It's not a new annual cost. It's higher than our existing cost. Our existing cost was about 600, a little over 600,000. The new cost is $1 million, just north of $1 million.
And if I may add, Representative, in the past, we have often plugged some of these budget gaps with federal election funding, but that funding has run out and there is none forthcoming
Okay.
so far on the agenda.
So thank you for that, but I guess I'm looking at the net here. So if it existing cost was around $600,000 and the new cost is now over $1 million, we're putting $1 million in the budget and not the net. So where's the 600,000 that we were paying?
I have to put the whole thing in the budget.
Where's the 600,000 though? Like if it's an annual expense and we're paying $600,000 already,
It was in current year budget, should show up in the current year budget as 600,000 with an increase, but it might not detail it out because it would be in OE. So you see the OE was 1.3 and now is at 2.278. So there are other things that are in there. There's that one for the increase for the centralized system. So that's in there.
yeah,
And
I guess.
it may be helpful to know that in the next biennium, it will be a new CVRS system compared to the old one.
Okay, so I guess for the subcommittee, then I'd like to see where the actual already is. And if this is just the net of 400,000 that we're adding, or is it the request, which is the baseline adjustment, which is saying we're adjusting it by $1 million. So
I will provide that information to you.
thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative.
Are there any other questions? Representative Zawistowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just a follow-up to the centralized voter registration system. You mentioned that there is an upgrade or a new system. Do you anticipate this is going to be, wind up being any cost to our municipalities to be able to connect with this system? Not literally connect, but to be able to provide the information in maybe a different format?
At this point, we don't foresee any costs associated with the new system for the municipalities. We're just taking the old system out, replacing it with a new. The only cost may be in time for those folks at the municipalities to learn the new system, so training, but there will be no direct cost to the municipalities for the new system.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Well, I hope, Madam Secretary, that you're enjoying your time down there. We're going to send your staff back over to your office and they can do whatever they have to do over there.
They'll be busy. Thank you so
Okay.
much for accommodating this time. We appreciate it. And thank you for your questions. And we will get that information over to the subcommittee.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So where are we? What is our next time, Taylor, that we have to go into?
So GGB is going to be meeting at 2 o'clock. In the interim, if I pull up my handy dandy calendar, at 1:30, the legislative subcommittee will have their OFA briefing, but our next agency budget presentation will be at 2 p.m. for GGB.
Okay, so 1:30 and then 2 o'clock.
Yes.
All right.
If I may.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Regulation protections briefing is from 1 to 2.
Regulations and protection briefing is 1 to 2 and legislative management is from 1:30 to 2.
Correct.
And then 2 o'clock is.
GGB.
All right.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Very good. We'll be back.
This is a briefing. I don't want to ask. Yeah, but it's gonna be over 2,600, right?
It's not this with OFA.
Yeah.